where you all are joining us from? Can you all type in the chat where you are joining us from? Delhi, Kolkata, Noida, Hyderabad, Bhubaneswar, Surat. Okay. CG. CG is too big. Rajasthan. Somebody is joining us from Dubai. Okay. Indore, Rajasthan. Someone is too passionate about Indore, it seems. Good to see. Nanded. Okay. Home, of course. Surat, Bangalore, Gurgaon. Okay. I want everyone to type in the chat where you're joining us from. Bhatinda. Okay. Krur, Mumbai, Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Bhilai. Nice, yeah. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to host you again. Let me check if our panelists are here. Mr. Jayanta is here. Yogesh, I'm checking if he's here. Okay, Yogesh is saying he'll join in a minute. Not a problem. Great, yeah, good to know. Good to know. This is not a pre-placement talk. It's a masterclass on indirect taxation, right? Uh, so today is going to be all about indirect taxation, what the role is, what is the type of work that indirect taxation professionals do in different types of companies. What is the work like? What is a day like? What's your growth trajectory like? It is going to be all about that. We have subject matter expert, Mr. Jayanta, with more than 20 years of experience. इतनी हम सब लोगों की काफी लोगों की तो एज भी इतनी होगी, right? 20, 21, 22. That is the kind of experience that he has specifically in indirect taxation. We'll also be joined by Mr. Yogesh. He is also a subject matter expert with 8+ years of experience. So आपके जो भी doubts हैं, whatever doubts that you have, the flow of this session is going to be like, first we'll have a brief intro about what the domain is like, what is the type of work that indirect tax professionals do, some examples around the work that is there. Towards the second half of the session, we also have a big announcement planned for you. And after that, we'll take questions and answers, right? It's going to be a very compact, power-packed session of 45 minutes. We have a hard stop at 4:45. So please keep all your doubts for the end. Over to you, Mr. Jayanta. If you can just give a brief intro about you, your experience, how is the journey been so far, the roller coaster ride, and then we can start with the session.
Thank you so much, Umang. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. So, hello everyone, and welcome to this. It's really great to be here talking to all of you, all you youngsters. So, like Umang said, I've got more than 20 years of experience in indirect tax. I started out in 2003, and my entire experience has been with the Big Four only. And even currently, I'm working with one of the Big Fours, right? So, just to give you a perspective, when we started off with indirect tax, when I started off with indirect tax, VAT had just come in. We were moving from a sales tax regime to a VAT regime. While we still did a lot of sales tax work because, the Purana assessments hote and all those things, but we had just kind of moved into a VAT regime. And since then only we've been hearing right? A couple of years after that, I've been hearing कि GST आएगा, GST आएगा, right? And it took me 14 years of work ex before GST came in. Okay, so and during that period of time, we had VAT, service tax, excise, customs, entry tax, you name it, local body tax, uh, various types of taxation and all that. And let me tell you, it was a nightmare for two reasons, right? Because every state legislation was different. Every state had a different way of working. Uh, Not only that, the second biggest nightmare was हमारे पास किताबें नहीं होती थी. You know why? Because unlike today, you guys are so lucky कि when you go and you can just go to a website and there are a lot of these websites you can subscribe to and you get the latest updated laws. During our time, we had to go and maybe get a book and we were never sure whether that book is updated or not, and based on that and talking to 10 different people, we had to give advice, especially around VAT and entry tax, huh? Service tax now were pretty updated and aligned, but the state level taxes were a nightmare. So we were very at least in my mind, I was very keen that GST come in, right? And thankfully, 2017 GST has come in. It's 6 years now. A lot of developments have happened in this. But before we talk about GST we'll talk about in a little later. Let me just talk about what kind of uh, what's the profile of an indirect tax person. Uh, what do we see? And I'll of course, since I have worked in the I have not worked in the industry per se, and when we talk about industry, what I mean was we've got consultancies. We've got either one of the big four, EY, PWC, KPMG, Deloitte. Uh, we've got other boutique firms and other consultancies. You can work there. You can work when we say industry, you can work as an in-house tax counsel or an in-house tax expert, right? Doing indirect taxes for your own this thing. Uh, and then of course we've got some people who specialize in customs. So fewer people specialize in customs because customs ka jo domain hota hai, that is the day-to-day work which someone in customs would do is essentially logistics, clearing of goods and all, which is something that we don't need that much of expertise doing, right? So that is handled by the logistics service provider. But of course, beyond that, there's a lot of technical work on customs, right? So I was saying there are two sorts of professionals that we have. Okay, one can always judge which is a better, what is better for you or what is worse for you, because see, there is no hard and fast rule to say ki consultancy is better or industry is better. It is all up to you, right? It is all in your DNA, whether industry makes sense for you, whether consultancies make sense for you. And let me just try and so in my so I have never worked in an industry, so I'll be very frank with you. So whatever knowledge I have about kind of work in an industry and all is second hand based on the work which I've done with my clients. So I have done hardcore consultancy work for the last 20 years. Now, when we talk about consultancy, what are we talking about? Okay, at your level, let's say you join as a fresh person, a new joinee in any consultancy, any organization. So there are two types of work that you will get. Okay, again, how I break it is one is the compliance kind of work. So under GST, there's a lot of compliances to be done. So tomorrow we've got GSTR 1, 20th we've got GSTR 3B. So every month there's a GSTR 1, GSTR 3B. After filing these returns, there are a lot of reconciliations to be done between the GLs and your returns, your books and your returns, etc. And then you've got your annual returns and all that. Okay. So that is a regular month-on-month work that one would do. In between, now audits have started, assessments have started under GST. A lot of notices come and all that. So that is typically the kind of work that you're doing on a day-on-day basis. Okay. Uh, Compliances, we know are we've got specific dates for undertaking the compliances, but so far as notices are concerned, right, they will come out of the blue. आज छत्तीसगढ़ से नोटिस आ गया, कल महाराष्ट्र से नोटिस आ गया, परसों it'll be from some other place. Sometimes you got notices from 3-4 different states coming in together. So this is one kind of work that you're doing day on day, right? Compliances, notices, meeting with the tax officers, convincing them about our arguments and all that. The second type of work that one would do is what we call the advisory part of it, right? Let's say whether certain transaction would attract GST or not. What about, you see a lot of new things coming in. There was a recent circular issued on something what we call cross charge, intra-company cross charge, intra-company ISD, right? How do you interpret these circulars? How do you interpret the law? What do you advise your clients on, right? That's the advisory bit of what we do. So coupled together, these two comprise essentially what one would do for our clients. Now you may ask, would it be one client? Would it be multiple clients? The answer is very clear. You will work with multiple clients when you're doing in a consultancy. Of course, when you are in the industry, you are only working with your own organization. So let's say you are in, I'll give an example. Let's say you are in HUL, right? So you'll be doing the regular GST work for HUL. Look at, but if you look at a company that like the size of HUL, they will have plenty of work on their own. So they themselves will have a team of people who are doing, maybe they have not outsourced the compliance to a consultancy. They would, in that case, they would be doing all the compliances themselves, right? But the difference that I see, if you are in an industry versus consultancy, in an industry, you're doing more of the liaison work and compliance work between your or within your own organization. Aapne finance ke baad, you are liaising with finance to pull out information. You're working with your own internal IT people to make the systems more robust. You're working with the business people to explain to them why a particular transaction is, let's say, subject to GST or what the GST rate on a particular transaction. So that's more of the work that you would do if you're in an industry, right? Most people I've seen in the industry and all, they outsource the compliance work. So return filing and all that is outsourced to the consultants, but all the work of getting the data and everything together so as to enable the consultants to file returns, that is part of the industry. So let me just pause here. Let me hand it over to Yogesh, my colleague. So Yogesh would be more aware of the ground realities, because I, with my 20 years of experience, I am not doing too much of compliances today. Yogesh does that on a more day-to-day basis. So Yogesh, you want to add something to this?
I think Jayanta has given a broad spectrum of what all we do in GST or customs for that matter, and I think it's wonderful to hear from someone who has worked for 20 years and to get his experience, which we all do on a day-to-day basis. Right. So, Umang, do you want us to go ahead with something on GST more than continuing with this?
Yeah, I mean, we can. I mean, if you want, we can take some Q&As right now. But I think a bit more on GST, what the day looks like, what is a growth trajectory like, or something like that. If we can cover.
Okay. So let me just give us a small hint on how exactly GST works. Having said that, not just how GST works, what was there earlier and what exactly has changed now, and why there is so much of hue and cry about GST. All of us would have heard about this, right? All of us have heard GST. I think in the last 5 years, we have heard this term GST time and again, time and again, time and again. So can anybody of you tell me what is GST? Let's start off with that basic aspect. Anyone?
You can utilize chat.
Yeah.
People, please utilize chat.
So, indirect tax, GST, goods and service tax. That's a common answer, right? Full form. Goods and service tax, goods and service tax, tax on supply, levy of charges. So wonderful. I think we have a lot of good answers here. Destination based consumption tax. Wonderful. One nation, one tax. elimination of cascading effect. Let's pick a few terms and try to understand what these mean. So somebody told elimination of cascading effect. Now, this is one of the biggest selling points of GST. If I would say that GST is a business, and the reason it is successful is because of this one concept, or one of the few concepts called cascading effect has eliminated. So anybody who would like to go ahead and tell me how exactly is this cascading effect eliminated? Compulsory tax. So cascading effect is tax on tax, essentially, correct? So let us take one small example of how any routine transaction that would be there, in a company, and see how GST has impacted that company's life. So just give me a second. Yeah. Let me know if all of you can see my screen.
Yes, it's visible.
Yes. Okay. Let's say this is a factory. I'm just taking a raw structure here. Let's say this is a factory. What all happens in a factory? Say we purchase services, we purchase goods. There are some imports that happens in that particular factory. All of that. Now, in this transaction, so generally, what all happens in a factory? You import goods, you import services. You purchase goods domestically, you purchase services domestically. These are the four major transactions that generally happens in any company. Now, can all of you tell me what all are the basic taxes? I'm not even getting into nitty-gritties of SEZ and FT and all of those things. Just the basic taxation aspects. Can someone tell me before GST what all taxes were involved in this particular transaction? Excise duty, okay. Excise duty, CST, excise duty, CST, VAT, customs, VAT, CST, excise duty, service tax, wealth tax, wealth tax, not really wealth tax, but definitely all other taxes, octroi, local body tax. See, that is the prima facie difference. If you see earlier, basic customs duty, all of you would have heard these terms called CVD and SAD. Then comes excise, then comes octroi, VAT, CST. So imagine the kind of taxes that were there. So I'm not getting into SENVAT per se. I think we can take it up in the Q&A. It is not a tax. So all these are the kind of taxes that were there before GST came. And when I say tax, you should always remember every single tax has a law. So we are talking about these many acts. And VAT is state level act. So all of us, I think all of us are aware of how our constitution was there. I'll just pause here and take a little bit about the constitution. So our constitution is defined in a way that there are three lists. Correct? All of you would have, all those who are doing CA, definitely all of you would have seen this. There is a state list, there is a central list, there is a concurrent list. So state list is the list where only state government can implement taxes or implement laws. Central list is a list where only central government can implement laws. And then comes the concurrent list where both state and center can implement laws. Now, why? So Jayanta, when he told about GST, you all heard this line when it said that it took a decade for us to implement GST. So why is that? Obviously, there is a reason, and that is somewhere filled in the constitution of our country. So when I say that there were three lists, earlier what used to happen is sale of goods was written in the state list. So when anybody sells goods, any law in relation to sale of goods, which also means that taxes in relation to that sale of goods, was involved or implemented only by the state government. Then comes central. So services or manufacturing, these two words were there in the central list. So any kind of law in terms of taxes, if somebody has to implement on services or on manufacturing per se, was in the central list. Now what happens in a business? There is everything. There is sale, there is service, there is manufacturing. Obviously, once you manufacture only, you can sell. So because of this, multiple taxes were involved and multiple governments were involved. That is all the central government, the central government and all the state governments. Correct. So this was the case earlier. Same goes with the sale on the same kind of products, right? Even when you are, so all this was on the input side. Even when you are selling or moving those goods, all of these taxes were applicable, whether it is VATs and octroi, all of those. Now, when GST comes, what happens is all these taxes got combined into one single tax. So the same transaction, when we see now, it is only GST and obviously the customs part of it. So when I say that since earlier only state government were able to implement taxes on sale and only central government is able to implement tax on services or manufacturing, how did GST come? Anyone? Now also constitution is there. So what do you think has been changed in the constitution? So all of us have heard this, learned this, correct? All taxes have been subsumed into GST. But as a professional, you should also know how it has been subsumed. The word subsumed is so easy. Sir, all taxes became one. Simple khatam. Right? Concurrent list. Someone says that definitely there was an amendment. Correct? Combining the law through an article, okay, amendment to constitution. Here lies the reason. So they had to amend the constitution, not just a regular amendment. They had to ensure the state list, the central list, both are changed, and then GST is come. And when GST comes, they should plan it in a way that power is not given only to one. When I say one, power to only central government, obviously all the state governments will cry. Power to all the state governments, what will central get? Or how will central be able to manage all the three? If I put in the concurrent list, again the same issue comes. State and center both can have their own kind of taxes. Both can start charging taxes on everything. So it involves not just a lot of planning, a lot of thought process that in a country like India, when there is a change of this scale, so when there is a small change, lot of laws come in and go every year. But why is GST something that is moving across the country? Because GST is something that all of us also pay on a day-to-day basis. Not just businesses, all of us. Every time when you go into that canteen and eat that sandwich, you are paying GST. You may not be paying income tax on your pocket money. Correct. None of us pay income tax on our pocket money. But the reason why indirect tax is brought is to take taxes on these kind of transactions, which are not really, allowed, or which not really everyone will be able to give. So because of all these reasons, they had to come up with a new kind of transaction itself, and that became supply. All of us would have heard this term supply. Pura GST mein, pura customs mein, everyone has heard supply, supply, supply everywhere. But what is supply? So they had to define a new term. They had to bring in a new term which subsumes all taxes. When I say subsumes all taxes, how is it subsumed? Because of supply. They created a new concept called supply, which includes sale, which includes service, which includes manufacturing, which includes everything that you can imagine the business can do in a way that it balances the taxes also, and both state and central government are able to charge taxes. I hope you all understood what I said. So see, I am not getting into the sections, right? Section 7, there is supply, it is defined, all of that. But I am trying to make you understand of how somebody came up, or why somebody came up with the concept of supply. Why it took 10 years for GST to get implemented. Do you know how many laws were there in GST? So GST is one act, but before this act came, there were so many draft versions of the act. Before the draft version came, there were so many concept notes. That is how to implement. Let us brainstorm. The government or the ministers had to brainstorm and come up with something. And all this has to be done also considering the political situation of the country, correct? And that is why this change is such a big change. And one thing about GST, or particularly indirect tax profile, is it keeps you on your toes. One, GST is a new law. It is evolving. I think Jayanta just mentioned 10 days back we had a circular saying something, so somebody has read the concept of, very good. That's very, very, you will get a deeper understanding when you read the concept notes, definitely. So I was talking that just 10 days or a few days back, we got a notification on a particular type of transaction on change in a taxation structure. So why is that happening? Obviously, it's an evolving law, right? It's a very new law. So all income tax law is 1961. That doesn't mean there are no changes. Even today, there are changes in the income tax law. And the reason is businesses keep changing. Earlier, all of us were doing one kind of business. Now, world is become a business. No, NFTs came out of nowhere. We have a new kind of technology coming up every now and then. So to keep abreast with all the changes, taxation will never allow you to sleep. So someone who thinks that I get bored very easily, someone says like, I have a lot of brains, I want to keep my brain running. Tax is something that you have to always take up, be it whatever tax. And I'm sure Umang or Jayanta or anybody will agree to that fact that tax never allows you to sleep. So that is one thing in taxation regime that all of you will see. Definitely, it's a new law. Apart from that, you have to keep changing it to match the geopolitical situation of the country and of the world, and that is why customs keep changing. So, I just wanted to give a brief understanding or a background about GST, and then I think I'll throw the floor open for some questions before I, get into any other concept or anything else for that matter. So, anybody, any questions? So Jayanta, Umang, you want to add anything on this, the base of GST?
No, not me. Yogesh, this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going good. Any questions? If you have, please put it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll move forward.
Yeah.
And don't worry, we will talk about the growth structure also. So I am sure that's a very important point for everyone. We will talk about it.
Okay. Okay. Why there is, so I'll take one by one. Okay. What jobs are available in GST and how the career is? So, okay. This actually happened with me a few months back rather. Somebody asked me that GST is one act. Earlier there were, say 35 acts each state, and then excise and service tax and all of that. So 35 acts in totality, and therefore some or the other kept happening. That kept you busy. When GST is one single tax or one single act, do you still have that much work that you used to have earlier? So I asked, I asked that person that it's a very good thing that you're saying, but tell me one thing: is it enough to know the law? When you're in indirect tax, to know the law is not enough. What else should you know? You should know the process. Why process? Say a client tells you, I want to import XYZ. No, you tell, okay, import. The first thing client will ask you is, okay, what is the law? You'll tell, okay, as per the law, 20% is the rate of tax. Done. Will that the story get over there? No, no, no. You will have to tell the client what is the process. Okay. After the process, once you know the law, process also is required. Once you know the process, what else? Will you tell him that, okay, you have to go here, do this. This is the process. Will that stop there? No. Then comes the documentation. Once you know the process, you have to tell them that in terms of documentation, what all documents are required, where it is required, what you have to fill in those documents, where you should submit. That part gets over. But once you submit the documents, is it over? Not really. Once you submit the documents, the authorities call you. You have to navigate your way through the authorities, explain them. A lot of authorities are new, a lot of authorities are old. Some stick to their old structure, some are okay with new GST, some still don't understand the law. So I'm just talking about small aspect of import of transaction. So once you import, can I take my goods which I have imported in Kerala and can I move it all the way to Delhi and sell it there? Obviously I can. But with that, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to give some documents? Am I supposed to tell them that no, don't go to Delhi. You do one thing, you go to Madhya Pradesh, and from there you sell across North India because you will save taxes. But to tell that, do you know the law? Do you know the process? Do you know the documentation? Do you know what kind of navigation you have to do to ensure the entire system comes into place? Just for opening a new store, as simple as a store, we work with a very big company in clothing. If they have to open one store in a state, in a city, they have to think through how much. So GST is one angle. Obviously, there are a lot of angles. So in that, one of the angles is GST, where you have to tell them what process should be followed, where you will say, where you will not say, what you should do, what you should not do, all of that. And therefore, don't worry on the jobs part of it. Definitely, jobs are there. Definitely, there is something or the other that you can do. If you feel you like something which is steady and monotonous, something where you can always be safe, then compliance is always there. No, you want to keep doing something or the other, advisory is always there. You're not satisfied with GST, customs is there. You're not satisfied with customs, SEZ is there. You're not satisfied with SEZ, FTAs, free trade agreements are there, FTAs are there. So FTAs with so many countries are there. So again, indirect tax is not a small structure. You can in fact specialize. As Jayanta told, customs can be an area to specialize. Within customs, so many schemes are there which will save taxes. Those can be an area of specialization. But at your level, what you should know is jobs are there, market is there, opportunity is there. You have to go and grasp that. For that, your skill should be there. That is one challenge I think where all of the big companies are facing, is that people are interested, but they don't have the skill to put in that interest and to give them the results. So if you have that skill, if you have that particular knowledge where you can help those companies navigate through whatever they want, that should be your goal. So I think that, I hope I answered that question. Okay. For updates, where we can get all together, there's a government website, taxinformation.gov.in. I think you can just go there and you can get act, update, circular, everything you can get there. Then somebody told MF. I'm not really able to understand what is that. Jobs, I think I answered. Why there is no one rate system? Okay. If I tell you tomorrow, rice is taxed at 18%, will you be okay? Do you think the farmers will be okay? See, our country is a developing nation. And when I say developing nation, there is one structure here, one structure here. And not just in terms of income. You should also understand that income is one thing, but apart from income, there are a lot of other things that has to be taken into consideration. Correct. And you cannot tell that, okay, I will have only one rate across the country. So again, legally one rate is not a challenge, but practically you think that will you pay same rate for a Mercedes Benz? And will you be okay that somebody who is buying a Mercedes Benz is also paying the same rate, and you, or say anybody you know, struggling to buy say 5 kgs of rice is also paying the same rate of tax? And when you are able to compare these two, I think you will answer yourself whether one rate is possible or no. So definitely that. Then do you deal with litigations or only in compliance? I think it depends on where you go. When it comes to consulting, everything is there. That is litigation, compliance, advisory, all of those are there. And if again, I would at least recommend in the beginning, you should never stick to, okay, I will do only this or only compliance or only litigation. Just be open to everything. The first few years of your life should be to learn. I think we are still learning. I've given 8 years to ITT. I'm still learning. So there is no end to learning, definitely. So don't worry so much about specialization right away. I want to know what work we are doing in Big Four. Same thing. I think we do everything in Big Four. There's a client, you have to cater end to end to that client. So compliance, advisory, litigation, everything comes into that bucket. Articleship, you got a major and bit consultancy, litigation. This okay. Same, but for someone who is what should I do? See, attempts may be a criteria, maybe in some companies, correct? But that doesn't mean all others are not taking into account, the knowledge what you have or the work experience that you have. And I think that is also something that you should think about. That maybe a few companies have this thing about attempts, and again it is required. Why? Because I'll just give an example that say there's a company ABC. Okay, if it is one of the big fours, they will have say 10,000 resumes for one particular job. So to filter out, there has to be some criteria. Maybe initially it can become a problem, but over the years when you gain experience, then attempts doesn't matter. Again, it's a
Let me
problem
add to
only
that,
if you yeah.
I've taken a lot of interviews in my last 20 years of experience, right? Personally, I have not really looked at attempts or things like that. It is how that person comes across. It is how that person thinks. When I take an interview, I don't look at that person giving the right answer. I look at how he or she goes about giving the answer. Is there a proper thought process? Yeah, is he or she just talking up in the air? Okay. I don't look at whether the answer is correct or not, because I don't really expect someone who is a new joinee to know that much about the subject. I need that person to know the basics about the subject, but not so much that he or she can answer complicated questions. But what is your thought process? What would you do? So I'll give you a simple example. And this happened 10 years back. I interviewed a candidate, again fresh candidate. Uh, he gave me an answer which was a wrong answer. Okay. He called me up 3 hours later and he said, "Sir, I went back, did some research. I realized I gave the wrong answer. This is the correct answer." Okay. Next morning, I told my HR, hire this guy. For me, and it could be anything. It could be anything. Okay. For me, what struck me is that this guy, after completing, क्या होता है, हम exams के बाद what we do is we forget what's come in the exams. But this person had this thing to go back, think about the answer, maybe did some research, and came back and called me up and told me that, "Sir, I made a mistake. This is the right answer." So anything can strike you. So it is not about your attempts. It is, you know, the fact that all of you are pursuing CA, or many of you have completed CA and reached that level itself, means that you have put in that time, that effort, because I know how difficult chartered accountancy is. Okay. And let me tell you, I'm not a chartered accountant, I'm a lawyer. So I didn't have the guts to do CA. So I'll be very frank with you. Okay. So after my BCom, I did law. But I know how difficult it is. Okay. The fact that you kids have reached that stage, right, or are working towards that stage, means that you have got something in you to move to the next stage. Okay. 99.9% of, or maybe more than that, of the Indian population will not do what you guys are doing. Keep that in mind, because you've arrived at a particular level and you just need to move on from there. So that is my two bit to your question about number of attempts and all that. Sorry, Yogesh, continue please.
Yeah, no problem. I think it's a wonderful answer. I think. So I'll just go to the next question. Are we asked about IDT proceedings and all? I don't think so. As Janta told, it is not more about what you answer. It is more about how you answer. And I don't think anybody will get into the depth. That doesn't mean you should not learn. Again, it is important to learn as much as possible. At the same time, you should know that this is what you know and this is what you don't know. I think that is what somebody looks at. That I know this and I do not know this, because we will keep learning. So it's okay even if you don't know a few things. And again, what kind of questions come, none of us know. It all depends on the interviewer. Somebody has asked a conceptual doubt, saying that why is it a dual model of GST compared to single model in other countries? Just see, for the simple reason that, as I told, state and center both can levy tax on the same transaction. You cannot give power to one person, right? One entity in this case. So therefore, it has to be a dual structure. The scope of all kind of taxes will increase in not just future. It will keep on increasing, because India, see when business grows, taxation grows. With business, everything grows. So if you are aiming for a 5 trillion economy, or if you are aiming for something, and in the next 10 years, if we see Indian business go from 1 to 10, definitely everything that comes with it, whether it is taxes, whether it is anything else, that will always grow. So, Jayanta, anything on this aspect of, they're asking how is the future of indirect tax, will it grow or not grow?
Indirect tax is something, I mean, that will always be there. Always be there. That it's not ever going to go away. Right? It's there across the world. If you see it, it will always be there, and there will always be work in indirect tax. Sometimes you'll have less compliance work, more litigation work. Sometimes you'll have more litigation or more compliance, less litigation. There will always be those phases, but work will always be there. There's no doubt about it, and no one will be able, no company can run without indirect taxes, or taxes for that matter, be it direct or indirect.
Yeah. So I think the next question also answers the previous question, because somebody has asked that excise service tax has been replaced with GST. What will now replace GST? So just to give a small timeline, I think Janta can add on to this. It was sales tax, then came excise and service tax. That got little bit changed with Senvat, though not fully. Then all of these have now become GST. So you never know what is there in future. I'm sure before sales tax, Jayanta would be able to contribute, because I am not someone who has worked, so long.
No, so I see the intent was also, always to move towards a GST structure, because that is a structure which is there across the world. Okay. That was always the intent of the government way back 20, 30 years plus ago. Okay. So as such, GST is not going to change. There would be tweaks and all, there would be changes within the structure. There would be a lot of litigation within the structure, because again, GST is a 5-year-old law. Assessments on audits have just started. Uh, the officers are learning, the consultants are learning. There will always be a face-off between them. By the time Supreme Court comes with any clear guidelines on any particular aspect of GST, that will take 10 years, right? So it will be there, and I don't see GST changing anytime soon.
Yeah, that is for sure. Uh, So I think next thing is how to keep in touch with the changes. So keep reading the law, keep reading notifications, circulars, and once you're in the system, I think once you start working, you cannot not know the changes. I think so maybe I don't know as much changes in accounts that is happening today, but I cannot not know what is happening in GST, or for that matter taxes. So it's just about getting into the system. I think the system will run you, drive you, and if you have the drive within you to do something, I think you will automatically read. What are the challenges we face as consultants? There's a client who will call you and tell you, I'm importing XYZ, what is the rate? Correct. So as consultants, you will never be able to know the rate of everything. Like there is someone who will call you, say one of your relatives will call you, I'm getting rent, should I pay GST on that? So sometimes what happens is the law is so wide that you may not know everything, at least by heart. Maybe you have to go back, read, and then come back. And then there are times where there is so much of work that everyone wants to know what happened or what has to be done for a transaction. So the challenge is nothing but keeping abreast with the changes. At the same time, ensuring that you deliver that results to your clients, or for that matter for the company, even if you're not in a consulting role. It's a good kind of challenge to have. So
Yogesh, so I think there are, I mean, we've answered many questions. Let's take a couple of minutes to just do the announcement that we were waiting for, and then maybe for the remaining questions, we can take a couple of questions after the announcement that we're waiting to make. Yogesh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think there is some issue at Yogesh place. Internet issue, yeah.
Yogesh, am I audible?
Yeah, I think Yogesh, just give him a minute to rejoin. I think he just logged off. You must be just, he's back.
Yeah.
Yogesh, we'll just
Yogesh
speak
is
about the
Yogesh.
announcement. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So, for those of you who joined, we just mentioned at the start. For those of you who wait until the end, we have an announcement to make. I hope. So before we make the announcement, can you please put in the chat how did you find the session? How did you like the session? Did you get? I'm sure you got to learn a lot of things. Can you put it in the chat? How did you feel the session was? Did you get a broad eye view of a bird's eye view of what indirect taxation is? How was the previous regime? I'm sure in very simple terms, right? Anybody who wouldn't have even done article taxation would have been able to understand what this is about, right? Great, informative. Wonderful, wonderful. Great, informative. Got it. Yes, it was very crisp, bird's eye view, very simple terms. We also saw how it evolved into GST, the previous taxes, right? So, of course. So now comes an important milestone, an important time where we'll go forward with the announcement that we discussed in the start. Can anybody guess what the announcement is? Can anybody guess what the announcement is? We are here for a big announcement. Are you ready? Are you ready for the announcement? Okay, okay. Great, yeah. So it's a big day today. And for those of you who are here, we just wanted to reveal that in collaboration with PWC Tax Academy, we are launching a indirect tax certification program. It covers all details about indirect taxation as a domain, how to make a career in that domain, what is a career growth, what is a career trajectory like, the technicalities of the domain, GST, customs, all those things are combined into a one fantastic module by PwC Tax Academy, which you can find on cmonk.com. The details of which will also be shared over email. But just to tell you a bit about what the course is, Yogesh, can you please highlight key features of this course and this course?
Yeah. So again, I'm not taking a lot of time, just to keep it very crisp. As I told, that indirect tax has all of it. That is, you have to know the law, you have to know the process, you have to know the documentation, and you have to know what to do with which and where to go. Where is the website, or where is that, the physically what to do, all of that. So I think what we have done is we have tried to combine all of it into one straight jacket and say that, okay, take a concept and give everything about that concept, including some practical cases, including case studies, including the Bear Act, all of it, so that everything that you want to know about indirect tax, not just GST, it includes your customs or for import policies, SCZ, all of that at one place, so that it becomes a lot easier for you all to know or specialize in indirect tax at least. And not just indirect tax. Say if you're doing audit or if you're doing any other taxes, you should know some basics, so that tomorrow when your client asks you something, as chartered accountants or as people in the finance industry itself, if tomorrow somebody asks you a question, you should have that much basic idea about how this GST is involved. And somebody should not tell you that, okay, on this transaction there is no GST, and then because you have no knowledge, you have no idea what to do. So whether you're in domain of audit or tax or finance in anything else, if you are in this particular segment, then it is important for you to know the basics. And whether want to know the basics or specialize or any other aspect, this course will help you. So I think that is a simple one-liner that I wanted to tell.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Yogesh. Yeah.
Yeah, just also to add on, right? Generally, I also say to the students out is the best way is to learn from the best, right? And of course, you are going to be getting the best mentors out to learn your right. And it has been a project for which we have been working for a very long time, right? It's a very detailed course. Even if you have not done a great articleship exposure, I think this course will help you to provide a very detailed exposure as well, because a lot of assignments have been there, a lot of things have been taught in a practical way, which will help you to gain the practical insight, right? And definitely it will help you out to clear your interviews, of course, if you're going to be doing this course in a nice way, right? So that is there. The link of the course have been shared by Umang in the chat box, right? You can definitely enroll for this course. Of course, we have brought the course at a very nominal price for all of you guys, so that you can also gain one of the brand name in your CVs, which is there. Plus, also you can complete the course. Right, Yogesh, if you could just highlight on a duration and a bit of a content, if it is there. Yeah.
Okay. So this course is almost 100 to 110 hours in totality. That includes your videos or reading materials and assessments, all of that. And it covers, as I told, every aspect in much detail, and therefore the length of the course is so large.
Got it. Right. So it has a combination of both assignment as well as a video lectures, right? Which is there. And after you complete the course, right, you'll be giving a test. After you complete the test, right, you'll be getting a certificate. right? Which is there. So definitely it's a win-win situation for all of you guys. If you watch this course, trust me, it is going to be giving you an edge in the industry as well, in terms of technicals and also in terms of confidence, right? So that is there. Yes, I think Umang, you can take forward.
Great, yaar. Personally, for me, the session was very insightful. Yogesh, if there are any more questions, we'll take a couple of questions and then we'll move towards conclusion. Uh,
Yeah.
does anybody have any questions with regarding to indirect tax, GST, anything? If you have any doubts, this is the time. We are here for a couple of more minutes so that these mentors can answer all the questions that you have. Growth trajectory, Yogesh.
I
What's the
think that
growth
is something that
trajectory like?
is really, I think, getting people tensed. So see, okay, let's take two examples for that matter. Okay, say assume you go to an industry, forget consulting. Okay, you start off with say executive, you go all the way to manager or indirect tax head, and then so tax head of India, APAC, world. So there is no stop to where you want to grow, because nowadays everyone is an MNC. Everyone wants business in Europe or APAC or Asia, US, everywhere. So that is the growth trajectory for industry. And consulting, you can go all the way up to become a partner or where not. Depends on whether you want your practice or you want to join somewhere. That should help.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Any other questions? If you have, you can put it in the chat. We are happy to answer all the questions that you have. Otherwise, if there are no questions, we'll move towards conclusion. Any questions, guys? Please put it in the chat. I think rest of the other questions we answered before this.
Yeah.
By what date will the course finish? So it's not a live course, it's a self-paced module actually, which you can watch at your own time and convenience. It's all there, right? How much time it requires from compliance to advisory part? I'm not sure what is meant there.
So I think let me try and answer that. I think what you mean is, so okay, so as someone who's just joined the organization, so let's say if you join any of the big four, right, you will start, it's not that you will be doing only compliance or only advisory. Okay, as you join, I think 80% of your work would be compliance, and I'm talking about GST days, okay? And maybe 20% advisory. 2 years down the line, I think 2 or 3 years down the line, 50% of your this thing would be compliance, 50% advisory. As you go up the ladder, right? So 20 years definitely advisory. So I don't do compliances anymore. But even 5-6 years back, right? So when I was about 14, 15 years in the system, I was doing 90% compliance. Oh, sorry, advisory. So that is how it will work. But then the important thing to note is that you cannot segregate compliance and advisory. They are two sides of the same coin. आपको अगर reporting कैसे करनी है वो नहीं पता, if you don't know how to report something, what will you advise a client? So they are very, very connected to each other. So don't think of it as two separate things, but as two things which together will make you a wholesome indirect tax professional. I hope that answers your question. Litigation, okay, sorry. You're right, compliance is the foundation. Litigation definitely is there. Okay, now when you say litigation, your litigation will start right after assessments. You filed the annual returns. Let's say the audits happen, and 70% of the cases when there's an audit, it results in a show cause notice. They will definitely pick up an issue. Litigation starts from there. First level, assessing officer. Second level, appellate officer. Third level, tribunal. Fourth level, courts. Of course, you as chartered accountant, unless you are an advocate, you cannot appear before the courts. But we we support a lot of advocates and senior advocates. We are the ones advising the advocates and all. So these are the technical problems which has resulted in this case going to the court. So litigation is definitely there. And I know people who are only doing litigation and indirect tax. They're not doing advisory compliance. They're just doing litigation. But those are more they're again more the lawyers, right? Because see, so if you're going to do a litigation, yes, under GST, you have the GST practitioners thing. So you can litigate all the way up to the tribunal. But then the fun of litigation is in the courts when you stand before the judges, when you stand before the Supreme Court judges, when you stand before the High Court judges.
So I think there's one more question. I think we'll just take one more question saying that I don't have articleship experience, but you are interested in GST. So articleship experience may not matter so much because everyone who is coming as is a fresher.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
One of my best team members has done his articleship from under in assurance, in audits. Okay, so articleship is not, again, like I said, the important thing is how you think, how you process, right? You don't need to do an articleship in GST. If you've done it, good, because you've learned the basics. If you've not done it, I don't think anyone in the consultancy or at least in the big four, if I'm talking about it, or even the big six and all, are looking for, when they look to interview somebody, they are looking at somebody who would have done articleship in GST. If that is the case, it's definitely a bonus. Okay, definitely a bonus, right? If somebody knows GST, right, is definitely a bonus. But the base case that someone is looking at is that person, he or she, should have that knowledge, that confidence, that bent of mind to learn.
So just to add on and give a small example here, I have never done indirect tax in my articleship. I think that can help you understand.
Okay, I'm a lawyer. I've never done indirect tax before I joined the Big Four.
So I think.
God, it seems like most of the questions are answered. Is in an interview landmark judgment. Okay.
So landmark judgment may be asked depending if it is all over the news, just to check whether you have seen the news, etc. I don't think anybody will get into the technical aspect of what Supreme Court told, what High Court told, what was the change. I don't think they'll get into so much detail.
Got it. I have an articleship in statutory audit and not GST. So how can I reach out to the interview and clear the interview for indirect taxation role?
So I think that is already answered, saying articleship really doesn't matter. You have two examples right in front of you. Jayanta has never done indirect tax before joining. In my entire articleship, I have never done indirect tax. So I've done audits and direct tax.
But then you need to show that you have interest. It doesn't work. You just turn up in the interview just saying you don't know anything. If you have interest, you need to read a bit about it, right? All those things are there, of course.
Those are important. When you're in an interview, you are competing with 20. It's like the story I tell people, right? If you're in a jungle with 3 other people and a lion is running after you, you have to run faster than the other 2 people. That is all that matters.
Yeah. So Monali, as mentioned, articleship does not matter. That's of course there. Okay, great. I think we'll call it we'll move towards the conclusion. I hope everybody enjoyed the session with the level of simplicity with which both the mentors explained to us the indirect tax concepts, how we move to GST. I hope you found value in this session. For those of you who want to seriously pursue their careers into indirect taxation, there's a fantastic course that we've brought in association with PWC Tax Academy. You can explore that. You will also find the link to the course. We'll send it across to you over email. And I wish you all the best for the upcoming placements, right? All the best. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye bye. All the best.